we'll be able to show some slides, right? Right, I just want to make sure if the screen sharing is disabled. Okay, excellent. Thanks.
Awesome. And so I'm assuming, Eva, people are coming in. Okay, fantastic. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Well, not a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds to let people stream in. We have business to get to. It's the end of the semester. Yes. But welcome everybody as you're streaming in. If you don't all know, Ulink, the Ulink program has been engaged in this year of social equity. And so as part of this, we've been highlighting the work across schools that, you know, people in different schools are doing to kind of make connections between people doing all of this work. And so today we're so happy to be with the School of Education and Human Development. So excited to hear about the work that's happening here. I'm going to throw it over to the Associate Dean for Research in the school, Dr. Kevin Jacobs.
Great. Thanks, Allie. And thank you everyone for being here today. I know we were just discussing, you know, how this is the end of the semester, the last day of the semester, and I really appreciate everyone being able to carve out the time that you have to attend and also to present. So the overarching theme of the 4 presentations that you'll see today is that all of them involve you know, community-based research that's there to empower you know, youth, families, and just larger community groups. And so the first speaker that we'll have is Dr. Stephanie Burton, and she'll be talking about her work with this combination of art and science with the goal of improving the understanding amongst high school students of how sea level rise can affect the community. The second speaker will be Dr. Scott Evans, along with some of his doctoral students and an executive director from one of their community partners. And they'll be speaking about their partnership, longstanding partnership of his research team and this social change community partner, and their goal of fostering healthy development of underserved youth. After that, we'll have Dr. Gerda Nicholas speak about her work in empowering ethnic minorities and immigrants in addressing racism in their communities and how that can improve their psychological, physical, and relational well-being. And then finally, we'll have Dr. Arlette Perry from my department in kinesiology and sports science, talking about her THINK program and its goal of improving the healthy behaviors as it relates to nutrition and exercise amongst underserved youth, and empowering them to become health ambassadors to bring that information back to benefit their own families and their own communities. So I'm really proud to have the 4 of them representing our school, and I'm happy to hear them speak today about their work. So with that, I think we can get started with Stephanie.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Burton. I'm with the Department of Teaching and Learning. And today I'm going to discuss the Overtown Scholars Examine Sea Level Rise project. And the project is funded by the Mellon Foundation through the Low Art Museum's CREATE grant, which I think many of you are likely familiar with, but it's a fund that incentivizes faculty to incorporate some of the museum's cultural assets and artifacts into the curriculum. And so for this project, the curriculum is an instructional unit for an environmental science course that's being taught at Booker T. Washington High School in Overtown. Now, the project itself is to implement a student-centered art science curriculum where students are using artistic methods and works in order to research, analyze, and synthesize data that's documenting these patterns of sea level rise along Miami's coast, and then also for them to consider the impact of sea level rise on the Overtown community specifically, where many of the students live and of course are being educated. So the purpose of the curriculum is really to bring some relevant and increasingly innovative and engaging learning opportunities to traditionally marginalized students who may have even been further marginalized during the pandemic. So I will preface this discussion by saying that this is an ongoing research project, so it is not yet complete. It's still in its early stages, but I still wanted to present this project because I wanted to talk a bit about, one, the student population that the project serves, two, the project's research design, and then to think about these things in light of, these issues of equity and diversity. So first, I'll discuss some background information about the project and its origins, what it entails, and then I'll discuss how the pandemic has influenced the project's design, and then finally, the project's potential for impact. So a little background information. The project originated as a collaboration with a classroom teacher who was actually a grad student of mine. She was enrolled in TAL's SEALD program, and her education focus was looking at education and social change. And over the course, she had expressed a number of concerns, connections that she was making between the curriculum and things that she was seeing in her classroom. And during this time, she had some mounting concerns for her students because their electives were being placed with some intensive and remedial courses. And she wanted to offer them some engaging and hands-on learning opportunities, especially as morale was low as a result of the pandemic. And she had also expressed some concern regarding climate gentrification in the Overtown community and the impact that it was having on students living in the area. So students were describing things from a personal account of what they were seeing, but not necessarily making connections to some of the trends and how that was related to issues of climate. So she wanted to use her environmental science class for students to explore some of these things that they were seeing, for them to understand them, and to get a grasp of some of these local changes. So the scale of the CREATE grant as a seed grant was appropriate to address these types of concerns as a pilot project. So we designed a curriculum that included a series of lessons where students are working with data sets, digitized artwork, because at the time the museum was closed and we didn't know when it would reopen, and a toolkit of art supplies. And it was important, of course, to connect the artwork with the science concepts that students were exploring. And the LO had a range of selections to choose from their private collection, from the archives. So on the right, you'll see some examples of this. One of the works is Anne Covell's Sea Change, and it's actually a book, and it depicts the projections for coastal change along the along Florida's coast. And as you move through the pages, it shows how the peninsula changes geographically. And then there's a painting on the right. I'm not sure if it's visible from your view, but it's Andrew Morgan's Reflections, and it's depicting a representation of the Everglades, which is also another compromised local ecosystem. So for each lesson, there's an introduction, and then there's a lecture and discussion, and they're aligned with the next generation science standards that are taught in schools. And afterwards, students have opportunities to make field observations around the school within their community, and then they journal to record their observations. And a journal entry can include writing, sketching, painting, and they receive demos that are teaching them how to use these different artistic techniques. So there are different ways for them to communicate and synthesize their learning. So in my introduction, I mentioned that I wanted to discuss the student population and the research design as it relates to issues of equity and diversity. And I'm going to start to provide some context. So Booker T is a high school in Overtown, which is a historically Black neighborhood, and the school was one of the first high schools in Miami to educate Black students. Right now, at the moment, the student population is predominantly Black and Latino in that order. But the students' racial and ethnic makeup alone doesn't make this project, or any research project, one that addresses issues of equity and diversity. It has more to do with the intersection of these racial and ethnic identities with the history of the neighborhood and how climate change has been provoking climate gentrification and displacing the current residents. So we also see something similar happening in Little Havana, for example, where there are increased concerns about the rise in rents and property costs and fears that it's now being marketed as West Brickell. So these types of changes that are resulting because residences along the coast are no longer becoming habitable or are becoming too expensive to live in because they either will not be insured or the insurance is so high. So in addition to this, many of the students are recent residents. So many have recently immigrated from Haiti and Central America. And then another important factor is that this is a special education and environmental science class. And I placed special education in quotes because while the students in this class do have diverse learning needs, we do know that there is an over-referral of Black and Brown students and multilingual students in special education programs. So some of them may have real special needs, and some of them it may just be a facet of other learning dynamics or a mismatch between their cultural experiences and standardization of curriculum and teaching practices. So that was something to be conscious of. So this project highlights these issues of equity and diversity, not simply because of the students' racial and ethnic backgrounds, but rather because of the social implications that are at play when they're placed within this context, which includes the history of Overtown and social issues like climate gentrification. So I also mentioned the importance of the research design with regards to equity, and there have been many challenges when conducting education research during the pandemic. Learning in schools has been unpredictable. It's been marked in many cases by fear, health risks, loss, and limited resources. And the project design needed to acknowledge this and also acknowledge how the pandemic had highlighted some existing inequities that students were already experiencing. It was initially going to be solely in person, so an in-person teaching unit. But even as some of the students around the country had received online instruction, many students with IEPs were actually still learning in person in order to receive their accommodations. So this had highlighted another equity issue, that large investments were being made for online learning platforms, but there was exclusive access because students with special needs who couldn't receive their accommodations through these platforms because we didn't know how to provide them were being left out. So this teacher and I decided to change the research design a bit to include some in-person and pre-recorded lessons and demonstrations. And we wanted to use this as an opportunity to learn how to deliver some of those accommodations through online learning platforms, as opposed to just saying, well, it won't happen, it can't happen, because we don't know how. So this also became important when one of our key collaborators was actually diagnosed with COVID, was out for several weeks. So we had to find ways to sort of COVID-proof the project. And by that, I mean we had to make changes to accommodate many possible unpredictable events. But the challenges that we encountered that were highlighted by COVID taught me to think about how to design the research differently and forced me to consider some changes that actually improved the project and its potential reach for more equitable outcomes. And that brings me to this issue of its potential impact. So initially, the project was designed to bring some relevant, engaging opportunities to marginalized students, but now it's also poised to inform online learning practices for students with diverse needs. And once the project is complete, I'd like to disseminate our findings and best teaching practices with the teachers, the science teachers at the school. And I plan to use this project as a pilot to pursue larger grants, and if successful, it will allow me to broaden the reach for this and produce some more generalizable findings. And again, all of this is in service of providing guidance for inclusive, engaging, online and in-person learning opportunities for diverse learners. Thank you. So I think we're going to open it up for questions now.
So if anyone has any questions, if you could please make sure to put them into the Q&A box and we'll go ahead and address them shortly. Okay.
Stephanie, while we're waiting those, can I just ask one question about, you talk about other funding sources. Have you looked into what some of those might be, or where you might be looking for future funding?
Yeah, so I have been looking at a few funding sources, and actually when I was in the process of putting this together and in discussion with the LO, I asked if I was to go forward and pursue funding, if they would still be interested in being a collaborator. And so there are other Mellon grants to pursue, but then there is now a new series of funding that is poised to be released as part of the CARES Act, so the COVID relief funds. And there is a specific strand, a grant that is designed around education and equity, and looking at how certain populations have been more adversely affected by the pandemic and outcomes of the pandemic. This is something that is still in the works and has not yet been released into policy, but I've been tracking these funds and all of the announcements that are coming out around the funding in response to COVID relief. And I think it is, the way that this project was designed during this time, it's really well poised to speak to a lot of the funding that is directly around these issues of COVID relief and lost learning opportunities during this time.
Yeah, do you see the question in the Q&A there? Yeah.
Question reads, what do you think is the most interesting, important takeaway from this project? I think the biggest takeaway, most interesting thing is actually the challenges that we faced. Initially, when I went into the project, I was feeling a little bit skeptical about conducting research during COVID, and a little bit hesitant. And what I found is that it actually ended up refining and strengthening the project in ways that it wouldn't have had we not had the pandemic. And that it had me thinking more about issues of access and resources that historically have not been equally distributed. And when I talked near the end about COVID proofing the project, I now think of that as a standard that I would keep in mind for any project that I would do, regardless, of the pandemic and its aftermath, because it held me to such a high and unique standard in making sure that there was access for students and even for the teacher who was participating in ways that I hadn't previously considered.
Let's see. Great. All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Scott, you'd like to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little bit of an intro before I jump into the screen sharing. Thanks, Stephanie. Really, really interesting. And thanks for the invite to be here. And thanks everybody for showing up this last week of classes. I'm Scott Evans, preferred pronouns he, him, his. I'm a community psychologist and community engaged researcher here in the School of Education and Human Development. I'm the faculty lead on the Engagement, Power, and Social Action Research team. And I have some from my crew here today. And a couple of our community partners, and they will introduce themselves along the way. We engage in collaborative action research with community organizations and coalitions that work on a variety of social justice issues. I kind of consider myself a social justice research generalist in that I don't really consider myself an expert on any kind of social equity issues per se, but I do have some expertise gained in the field and also through the academy related to social change process and the ways in which people and groups go about building capacity and collective power for social change, no matter the social justice issue. I've come to believe that the most significant role I can play as a researcher is entering into alliances with community-based groups engaged in campaigns against some form of injustice, and sharing university resources and expertise while accepting their leadership and wisdom. While all of the projects we're engaged in involve exposing and interrogating some form of injustice, I do think how we do research or the way we conduct research is as important as what we research. And for me, it's an ongoing process of troubling or problematizing the traditional research dynamics and giving authority to communities' knowledge and lived experience. Our approach falls under the umbrella of community engaged research, a collaborative partnership of academics and community members who engage in research together with the purpose of solving pressing community challenges. And the aim is to collaboratively develop and apply knowledge to consequential public issues in pursuit of social and racial justice. So today we're going to share a little bit about our longstanding partnership with PowerU Center for Social Change. And kind of what's ahead in the presentation. I'm going to have Lee and Kino talk a little bit about PowerU and our relationship. Andrea Botero is going to come in and talk a little bit about kind of searching for numbers for Miami-Dade County Public Schools and how to use that as part of our process. Discuss the emergent process and the opportunity to apply and receive a grant to do participatory action research. Mars and Nancy will talk a little bit about that project that's ongoing right now, and then we'll close and look ahead and then open it up for some questions if possible. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee and Kino for the next step. You guys want to jump in?
Of course, of course. If you want to go to the next couple of slides, that'd be perfect. Oh, perfect. All right, hey everybody, I'm Kino. I'm one of the youth organizers at PowerU Center for Social Change. Pronoun, you should just call me Kino. And Lee, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name is Lee, she, her pronouns. I'm a PhD candidate in the Community Wellbeing Program.
So a little bit about PowerU. We've been around for the past 20 years. We are definitely dedicating our time and space to organizing Black and Brown youth, but actually having a center around young Black women. And we are broken off into 3 different campaigns, but the campaign that we're going to be talking about today, and a little later, another person from the organization will be talking about another campaign, the work that they're doing as well. But we focus around police-free schools and making sure that folks understand that mental health support is more important than like monitoring and policing Black and Brown students. So PowerU larger, or CNC, which is Counselors Not Cops, that's the committee that I'm spearheading. The big problem is that there's a school to prison pipeline. There's like these things that actually funnel Black and Brown students into a system that actually pushes them into prison. And the issue or things that we are tackling right now is this overspending of law enforcement. Miami-Dade County has a police department. Miami-Dade Public School also has a police department. And there's a lot of funding that's going into it, especially even through the pandemic. Like they are still utilizing law enforcement as a way to hold young folks accountable or just refer them into the juvenile justice center. And I'm gonna be passing it over to Lee, talk a little bit around the relationship that we have with each other.
Yeah, great. So about a couple of years ago, Scott and I met with James, the executive director at PowerU, and presented this idea of our community-based participatory action research class actually working and partnering with PowerU to just put those principles into practice. And so through, they gave us the green light, we had an initial meeting with the CNC committee, and we got to meet all the young folks and the Kino and other organizers in the space. And we had a general conversation about how can we best support Power U and the work that they're doing. And what we came up with was looking for data that could help inform their demands, attending a town hall that they were planning, and speaking at community school board meetings on behalf of them. So I'm going to turn it to Andrea to talk a little bit more about the data.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Botero. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a second-year doctoral student in the Community Wellbeing Program. I have supported Power Use Counselors Not Cops campaigns with data collection, data analysis, and visualization. We started analyzing the number of students for every school counselor, psychologist, social worker, and school resource officers who are law enforcement. We found that in the 2018-2019 school year, there were 462 students for every school counselor in Miami-Dade County Public Schools, when the American School Counselor Association recommended ratio is 1 school counselor for every 250 students. However, it has been incredibly difficult to calculate the number of students for every school resource officers, because the data that is made publicly available by the Florida Department of Education has been often been incomplete or obscured. We have submitted numerous public record requests to the district and have not gotten a response. Additionally, we have also supported Power U by building community capacity building so the young leaders know how to access, organize, and analyze data on their own. Finally, we have also helped Power U analyzing the social issue from a broader perspective and have been able to show how policing in schools is correlated with the number of school-related arrests and is disproportionately affecting Black students. For instance, we have found that in 2019, Black students in Florida got arrested 2.1 times more than white students. Passing the mic again to Scott.
I muted myself. Sorry. Thank you, folks. I'm just going to kind of do a quick intro and then pass it over to Nancy and Mars. One of the things that's really hard about community engaged research is finding the kind of resource support to engage deeply in this work. And we had an opportunity to submit a grant to the Sociological Initiatives Foundation. It's one of the few foundations that actually supports and celebrates participatory action research. We were awarded that grant, and that allowed us to work closely with the young people and with Power U to create a youth participatory action research project. So I'm going to pass it over to Nancy and Mars to talk a little bit about that work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Scott. My name is Nancy. I'm the young parent organizer at Power U. So when we recruited young people to join this research project, we chose people who could get to the nuance of what safety means from different perspectives and who understood care as an operative word. And I believe Sam, one of my coworkers, chose people who had a clear understanding of reproductive justice and could see things through a gender lens so that we could answer our research question collaboratively. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Mars Fernandez. I am a counseling psych student in the School of Education. And so this is our research question. And so we needed to figure out how we were going to form a group to, well, first of all, construct this question and then begin to really answer it. So when reflecting on what we wanted to present on, we thought we would share this one guided empathy meditation that we did among our groups because, and it was basically us imagining ourselves in school. So it allowed us to be vulnerable with each other, which also created safety in school, which is an important value to us that both guided our inquiry, but also our research practices just among ourselves as a group.
Yeah, and we wanted to really create a container on Zoom. So we were very much aware that, we were on Zoom, that there was a pandemic happening. So our group check-ins were often about safety too, and what our young people were experiencing at the moment. And our collaborative style was very yes and improvisational.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time also reflecting on and building trust and care into our interview process with young people, and then they were the people actually conducting interviews with other young people. So you know, we spent time imagining what it would be like to be interviewed and building some good debriefing process into those interviews as well. So next up, we're holding focus groups with our original respondents as our partners in further analysis and knowledge creation. And with that, I'll pass it along to Scott.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for taking time out of your day to jump on here with me and help present this project. You know, one of the things that's really interesting about this participatory project is that, you know, as part of our work with Power U, we were noticing that there were two competing narratives happening as it relates to safety in schools. One had to do with, you know, the need to harden schools, to arm teachers, to put cops in schools, and to really make them, you know, kind of sheltered spaces and protective. We need to protect young people. But young people had a very different narrative about what safety means to them in the school context. And so that was kind of the piece that kind of generated the idea for this participatory project. And I have to say the young people who are part of that research team have really taken that and run with it. And it has been really inspiring to me as a researcher to work with all those folks to do it. So we'll close there. And if there are any questions, you can shoot them our way and I'll make somebody else answer them.
Okay, we'll give it a second. I don't see any questions coming in, but please, if you do have any questions, go ahead and submit them via the Q&A box.
Scott, can I just ask you real quick while we're waiting for questions? This is kind of what's been the most challenging part about moving the partnership forward?
Well, COVID.
Yeah.
But you know, I think I don't know. I think we've had kind of run into some challenges just kind of navigating kind of institutional constraints to doing community-based work. And I think for us, it's also kind of reflecting often on our own privilege and kind of what we're bringing into these spaces and our whiteness, particularly my whiteness and maleness, and trying to be really reflective of that and trying to turn over leadership to our community partners to tell us kind of how we can be most helpful. But I don't know if any of my team has any other thoughts about challenges.
Yeah, I think what was like super clear about it is that like all the work that we put in, all the like research around data still to like have like our superintendent, our school board tell us that it's incorrect. And it's like they have no accountability to like actually check in with like the Florida Educational Department. Like it's just like a write-off really quickly for it. It's just like, well, you're wrong versus like them actually taking accountability that like we did research, we are clear, and like really leaving off saying like hearing that like the numbers don't really matter, statistics don't really matter, data doesn't really matter. It's really around like their opinion and who can vote them in and out. It's very yeah, that was like one of the hardest things that we had to deal with.
You know, and that's part of this idea of social equity research, right? Is that it's not just the institution that has the power to generate knowledge, although we privilege that certainly in the institution and in our world. But you know, these young people have so much wisdom and experience of their lives, and they also can be excellent researchers with the supports and trying to value their knowledge and lived experience as far as these social issues go is really important.
Scott, we did have a question in the Q&A. Can you see it there? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good one and a hard one. Can my team see it? Does anybody feel like you want to take a stab at that? I almost feel like maybe Nancy, the organization, Kino or Nancy may have some different perspectives on that than we would.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I think as an organization, we would often respond and have like political education events post some of the uprisings and some of the violence that we were seeing and in response to it. But us as a research team, um, this isn't like a temporary thing. This is like an everyday thing that our young people are experiencing. So it really wasn't like just a current event. I think it was also like, just a climate thing that just exists in their neighborhoods and in the schools, um, and it's just a part of their everyday lives most of the time. Although it's not always, it's more structural than direct.
There's another question. It says, any plans to promote a social media campaign around your findings?
Yep. So right now, CNC is working with Andrea. We have a comms director named Ian, and we are trying to create like little social media visual bites from a lot of the charts and data that we're working on, a lot of the information that we got, in a hope to really get folks to like push out our message in a broader way. And also we're thinking about how do we start to like do like little TikToks around like infographics and things like that. And that gets young folks excited because it's stuff that young folks are already doing to start reaching our base of folk that are in Florida or even in Miami directly as a way to get folks to be engaged with work. So we are, and we're still like, if you have any hope to jump in, we would love just to have folks who have ideas around how do we best reach out to the base of folks.
Thank you, Scott, and your team. Thanks so much for presenting that. So next we have Dr. Gerda Nicholas. Gerda, you have your slide deck ready there.
I do. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for the invitation to be a part of this Ulink series. It's really wonderful to go after my colleagues. I want to say congratulations to the amazing folks in the School of Education and Human Development who is doing such amazing work. So it's been really inspirational to just hear those presentations overall. And I'm so happy to go after Power U because I think the work that we're doing also fits very well with some of the things that many of you have been doing in the community as well. So it truly is an honor for me to be here with all of you. I'm just gonna go ahead and just share the slide and really hoping to kind of walk you through a story a bit around our team, which is Challenging Racism to Ethnocultural Research. And we're doing so with children and families in the Miami area. And so the question is like, how do you do that? How do you address this issue about racism? And clearly we saw how important it is to do so both at the individual systems and community level, more and more so with the George Floyd and many other things that happened in 2020 as we also were dealing with the pandemic of COVID. We know very well that one of the major pandemics that we've been dealing with in this society is the pandemic of racism. Unfortunately, we have not figured out the vaccine yet for that pandemic, but it is a continual work to try to think about ways that we need to address this, at all levels. So I want to make sure that we're very clear some of the things we're going to be talking about, because we're talking about race, we're talking about racism, we're talking about structural racism, and more importantly, we're talking about the overall impact that all of that have, the effect that it has on individuals in the communities, and that is trauma from racism. And oftentimes when we talk about trauma, we oftentimes don't talk about the trauma that one experiences as a result of racism, and we are talking about a cumulative trauma, right? That is both emotional, economic, health, and social effect of all of that in the lives of not just individuals, but families, but also the larger systems as well. And so with that in mind, we oftentimes don't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder when we're talking about this type of trauma, because there's no post associated with it. We're talking about ongoing trauma that individuals are managing and dealing with, and by virtue of not just from the verdict that we just heard, from the George Floyd verdict, but also just immediately what just happened. As soon as we were able to take a look at this verdict, other shootings were very much in the forefront. And so we sought out as a team to really address the impact of all of those isms that we're talking about in the lives of young people and families, particularly here in South Florida area. And so I add the piece around culture and diversity because we're also talking about individuals that are very diverse in terms of their culture as we're looking at the work here in Miami. And so when we're talking about addressing issues of racism and as it pertains to Bahamian versus Haitian versus Jamaican versus indigenous African Americans here in the area, all of that matters in terms of how we take that all into account. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about, and then all of you know the various dimensions of diversity, which is really what we're trying to impact at the core front of all of this, is make sure that there's an opportunity for us to really celebrate all aspects of that, of the individuals as well. So, and so our work is focusing on anti-racism. That is the focus of the work that we do on CRISAIR. It would take me too long, but we do have an amazing website that you can go on to take a look at the work that we are doing with our community partners. We partner with a little over about close to 16 community partners right now in that work that we are doing. Our work has, in terms of the intervention that I'm going to share with you, is mostly centered here in the West Grove area, as well as in Liberty City as well, with some of our community partners. And so this, just to give you a quick idea and understanding of what is it that we're talking about when we're talking about anti-racism work. So here's a team. We recognize that racism exists. I come to Miami and it wasn't an area that I heard people talking about a lot in terms of anti-racism work. We understood how important it is for us to be able to do that work. And so we hosted our very first day of dialogue. And the first day of dialogue was an opportunity to bring community partners together to hear from them around the issues that were really pertinent to the community and how to address them. This became a central part of what people in the community felt should be the focus of the work that we do. But more importantly, they felt that that work really needed to start with young people in the area. Right. And so, and by young people, they really mean young people, right? Your kindergarten, elementary, right, and so forth. And so when we sought out to do anti-racism work, to understand ways that racism can impact the individual at the individual level and the family systems level, one of the many things that we've heard from people is that young people don't experience racism. Young people can't talk about racism. Like young people, it's too early to begin that particular work and have conversation with young people about racism. So we sought out to understand that a little bit. And so we hosted a whole workshop with young people around just this issue about racism and anti-racism. And so I want to share with you a little bit of that work so that way you can see how did we get to some of that work. So here's what the work program looked like with young kids. We're talking about kindergarten, your elementary school age kids who came in for a 1 week conversation and workshop around racism, right? Very bold, right? So the idea is like, could young people talk about, can they engage in conversation? Did they understand what was happening for them and so forth? So the program included creative writing. So we wanted to hear their thoughts. Could they write poetries? Can they look at reading materials related to racism? So that was the first part of the program. And so for that, they were asked to give a series of prompts to really think about, write about what comes to their mind when it comes to this concept of racism and so forth, right? And then could they write a poem about it, right? About their own experience, about who they are, right? And so forth. And so this is like straight out of a poem from one of the young people who's able to talk about one's history, who's able to talk and find words to talk about who I am and why do I matter, in the system. Really, really powerful to us. The second aspect of the program was an art and painting workshop, was this opportunity again to see, could kids really use artistic tool to create images that are reflective of their experiences with racism, right? Overall. So clearly the kids were, led to identify the number of feelings associated with racism. and able to sort of like draw themselves. So what you see here are sort of like these images of these kids drawing themselves in the hallway and then really thinking about like, what do they look like, right? So that's what you're seeing here, right? Could they then dress that up, that image up in terms of how do they think people see them and how do they see themselves, right? Clearly, right, amazing, they're able to do that. But what's important to us is that many of these young people saw themselves as Black and brown kids, right? They understood what that meant overall. The next piece that we asked them was to use their drawing to talk a little bit about messages that they may have against racism, right? So now I don't know if you can see some of them here, but they clearly are able to make that distinction between how racism shows up and what does that look like overall. So I'm going through this very quickly because I know that my time is really short with all of you. Happy to, you're able to see many of these things on our website. But overall, it's an opportunity to say the young people were absolutely able to talk about and understand what racism is and can write about it and can talk about it, right, overall. I don't know if you can see this particular image. This is an image of a young man who's 7 years old, and the thing that you are seeing that's been poured into the tub is bleach, right? That he understood that this concept, this idea about where we live was a message that is oftentimes given on how do I become something other than who I am, right? And bleach becomes a central part of that. Thank you, Ava, right? So from all of that, right, they're able to talk about different, racism to their art and so forth. And so through all of it, we also had a dancing workshop where they have an opportunity to express their, like, can they do it? Can they talk about, can they express their overall sense about racism? So in a nutshell, we learned that absolutely we can launch a program to look at racism, to look at racial identity among young people here in the South Florida area. That gave birth to our Kulula project that we've been running, which is really using racial identity, racial socializations, and so forth to really create an intervention program specifically for elementary, middle, and high school kids around really building themselves in terms of how they are managing racism in their communities overall. And then out of the program that we created for young people, you see a couple images of that, the young people told us that that's really great that we are part of this program, but we really think you should create it for my parents because our parents are dealing with a level of racism in society and we hear them talk about it as well. So out of that came the Strong Roots program, which is the Strong Root Caregiver program that is grounded in promoting the ethnic and racial identity, but more importantly, it's about creating spaces for parents and caregivers to talk about their experiences with racism because it has a direct impact with how they are socializing young people overall, right? And so these have been some of the two key programs that we've created as a part of the community in the last 8 or so years. And I love this message from one of our kids who participated in the program that clearly this idea about addressing racism is really, really central. If in fact we want to do some of the work that I heard that Scott is talking about, that I hear that many of our community partners are addressing, it is crucial for us to really ensure that we're also addressing some of the systemic racism in the way that they are impacting young people as well. With that, I say thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Gerda. I think to keep us on time, we're going to move to the next presentation. If you have questions for Dr. Nicholas, you could submit those still, and then I think Ava can email those and get your questions answered that way. Okay, so thanks very much, Gerda. So Arlette, you're next there if you want to get your slides set up.
Mute. I'm looking for my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, whoops, there it is. Okay, let's see if it's here. Hold on a second. Hold on, I'm just trying to share my screen here. Okay, sure. Okay, we got it. Okay, thank you. Had a little trouble here. Okay, so first of all,
Arlette, I don't think we can see your slides. Can anybody see Arlette's slides?
No, I still see your.
We see your browser, Arlette.
oh, okay. You see the browser?
Yeah, so you just need to stop screen sharing, close out the browser, and make sure the PowerPoint's open, and then screen share.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's not on here. Where'd it go?
Can you guys see it now?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the Think program, but before I get started, I wanted to just congratulate the speakers before me because you guys did an excellent job and you're going to be a very difficult act to follow. So I'll do the best I can, but it was very enlightening and thank you all for sharing this with us. So everybody always asks me, what is the Think program? Well, it stands for Translational Health in Nutrition and Kinesiology. And it's a program designed to create a culture of health and fitness among our youth. And really, the way we do this is get them to think about what they're eating, how they're exercising. And we do this through a program in nutrition and movement science called kinesiology. It occurs against the backdrop of STEM education. And really what we want to do is to empower youth to improve their personal lifestyle behaviors. And perhaps in the future, serve as health ambassadors, not only for their families, but for their communities as well. So one thing that happened about 40 years ago when I first moved to Miami, how did this all begin? This is how long I've been here. I noticed that there was a tremendous increase in obesity in adults, and we saw it in women and men. And we live in this beautiful climate in Miami where we're outdoors most of the time. And I said, what is going on here? Why are the rates of obesity keep climbing? Why do they keep going up? And it wasn't just confined to adults. It was in children too. And this is a graph of 2015-16, but you can see that just close to 14% of kids 2 to 5 years old are obese. And then when we get to 6 to 11, this is everybody, 18.4% of the kids are obese. And then when we go to 12 to 19, 20.6%, that's 1 in 5 kids are obese. And this is for boys here and girls. Similar pattern as we get older, rates of obesity increase. And if we did this by race, by far, the disproportionately higher rates of obesity are in Hispanic and African-American youth. So what is going on? What is the problem? I mean, I know that we watch a lot of TV. I know that we don't tend to take the stairs. We take a lot of escalators and elevators. I know we spend an awful lot of time in front of the computers. And so I have to wonder what is going on here. And when you look at the totality of things, neighborhoods, portion sizes, less PE in school, and then you add to it computers, technology, and I'm going to add in phone use here as well as technology, and television and streaming in all these shows from Amazon and Netflix. And then this past year, the COVID-19 epidemic, you have essentially the perfect storm for increasing obesity. And this has tremendous implications. Childhood obesity has increased from 5 to 20%. It's a 400% increase in obesity since when I arrived in Miami 40 years ago. So what does this translate into health-wise? More cases of high blood pressure, more cases of dyslipidemia, high cholesterol levels, more cases of diabetes, and more reported cases of asthma. And for me, as an exercise physiologist specializing in cardiovascular physiology, I was appalled to see that 34% of adolescents can't even pass a basic fitness class, a basic fitness test, I should say. That's unbelievable. That's more than 1/3 of kids can't pass a basic fitness test. So I thought to myself, how can we create a culture of health and fitness for kids? And it has to start with education. It really is nutrition and exercise science 101 for elementary school kids, for middle school kids, for high school kids. We need to teach them about heart health, about metabolic health, about skeletal muscular health. And then in addition to that, we need to have hands-on clinical experiences for them. Can they read their heart waves? Can they read a P wave, a QRS wave, a T wave? And let's get them on a stress test and see if they know what's happening to their heart when they start exercising. And then they need to see what their bones look like, what their muscles look like. And when their muscles are encased in a bony lever system, how it moves. And then on the nutrition side, what are they going to come up with if they have to prepare a healthy meal? And can I ask them to bring the label in of their favorite food and critique it? How healthy is it? So these are the types of things we want to do clinically. And then we exercise them. And it's not just any exercise. It's exercise that makes them think. They have to exercise their mind as well as their body. So in this particular exercise here, where you see this girl jumping up and down, pretty big platform, she's got to go through 3 of these. She's got to, at the end of this, there's a shopping bag. She picks out a grocery item, could be beans, rice, anything. She's got to sprint back to a My Plate poster. And I think now we're using Harvard Plate. She's got to put that grocery item on the correct food group in the poster. And she's got to do it as fast as possible. So not only is she fast and she's got to be agile, she's got to think about what she's carrying and what food group to bring it to. So that's what we're looking for. And really, it's not about obesity prevention. I don't even want to talk about that in class. It's about making wise decisions about what you're eating, about how you're exercising, and improving your metabolic health. That's what we want to focus on. It's not about, oh, you're spending too much time in front of the TV, too much time in front of the computer. It's about being active. What decisions are you going to make regarding your exercise? Do you have a warm-up? Do you have a cool down? Do you have stretching? How much time you spent in vigorous exercise? That's what we want from the kids. We want them to make the decisions to think about their exercise. And then for me, it's about striving for metabolic fitness. And I really don't even want to hear the word obesity because I know that your weight will take care of itself if we can solve this. And so what's on tap for the future of the Think program? Well, these are behavioral changes that we have to make. We have to look at mental health, and we're fortunate enough to have Dr. Debbie Sue Lee from she's from EPS working with us on this component, which is already being incorporated and expanded into our program. And then we need to look at some of these cognitive components, brain games. And we're fortunate enough to have our own Dr. Brian Owari, who's a neurocognitive physiologist, who's coming in and helping us with this. So that when we do let's say a Simon Says activity, we say, okay, Simon says, point to your clavicle. Simon says, point to your iliac crest. Simon says, point to your femur, point to your patella. So they have to work quickly to figure out where to point to. And of course, if they point to the patella, they're out. But that's what we're trying to get them to do. And as the exercise physiologist here, I'm interested in what they're doing outside the classroom. Like I know when they're in the Think classroom, they're engaging and they're exercising, but are we translating this to outside the classroom? So we have Fitbits. We're trying to get a grant now for accelerometers because I want to see what they're doing on weekends and when they're not in the Think program. And then our biggest selection here, I'm really excited about our Sphygma Core unit. We're able now with the more sophisticated technology to go in non-invasively and measure vascular markers of health. And that basically tells us how compliant are your blood vessels? How much give do they have? Do they open up? Are they resilient? Or are they narrowed and stiff and really full of fibrous tissue so that very little blood can flow and oxygen can flow to your working tissues. And this is one of our best measures of cardiac health. And as early as 8 years old, we've been using a piece of equipment. We're seeing vascular indices of problems. There's stiffness and tightness in the large arteries. We're actually using it now in our women's health study, and I can talk more about that if some of you are interested. But this is an excellent marker of vascular health and cardiac health in kids, and we're excited about being able to use it. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, which is an important element in our program, you have to have role models. And I don't care if they're football players, basketball players, soccer players, tennis players, it doesn't matter. But these role models can really speak to what they have had to commit to in their training and their exercise in their sports. And they have a lot of responsibilities, and they have to combine that with academics because they have to succeed in school. And they can really show our youth what it's like to be able to do this and to commit to something that's really important to you. And it's a tremendous motivator for our kids, many of whom would love to be varsity athletes. So with that, I think I'll just show you a brief film of our after-school Think program in 2 schools, one predominantly Hispanic, one predominantly Black, and see just a little bit how it operates. Here we go. Okay.
THINK stands for Translational Health in Nutrition and Kinesiology. The THINK program is an educational after-school program where we work with kids age 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade to teach them about exercise, nutrition, and general health and general well-being.
Through our training, we get children to think about and make decisions regarding their nutritional habits.
Not only are we getting kids moving, but we're actually teaching them why they should be moving. Teaching them ahead of the curve so they don't end up developing cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure. When they told us that we're teaching them anatomy, I was like, this is going to be tough because I had a tough time. But if I learned it in elementary school, middle school, or high school, it wouldn't be as hard as it is now.
Being able to recognize when you're not just sore, you're actually injured, and the steps that you need to take to handle that injury.
It was wonderful to have undergraduate students majoring in athletic training teach them how to wrap, how to avoid strains, how to avoid sprains, different splinting techniques.
The field trip day is something that the THINK program has been looking forward to since day one.
That was a very special day for the children. They had a chance to come on campus, to see the pet athletic center, and most of all, to see the football players.
We were able to bring the kids to the football room where they could see 3 amazing football players speak to them about their own personal journey through health and nutrition, exercise, and just general wellness.
And you can see that the athletes represented role models for each of these students.
They're learning things that I've learned in college, during my years in college, and they're learning them right now.
I did not expect them to be able to learn this much. Like, we give them some pretty tough topics, and they do a really good job with it.
It's imperative that children learn about their bodies, about how it functions. It builds upon so much more than just educating them about their personal health. It gets them to enjoy what they're doing and to do it more often.
Our nation's youth needs the THINK program.
The THINK program is a collaborative initiative between the University of Miami and the YMCA of Greater Miami.
Love is what happens when you make other plans.
Okay, so there we are. And that's pretty much about our program. I did want to mention, for those of you who are interested, our Think Summer program was just approved for to operate on site this summer, and any faculty members who have kids that might be interested in coming, you're welcome to contact me, and you have priority being a faculty or staff member here at the University of Miami. Also, those of you who are interested in our women's health study, we're doing that as well, using the Sphygma core, which I mentioned, and looking at that. We're actually looking at race differences in central obesity and its relationship to cardiovascular health. Okay, that's it for me.
I guess that's it. I guess we're out of time, huh, Kevin?
think so, yeah.
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 We have the Vice Provost for Research and Scholarship on the line. I think she had a couple of things to say in closing.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to thank you, Kevin in particular, for organizing a really impressive showcase of the interdisciplinary work occurring across the School of Education and Human Development in equity. I have so many ideas and don't have time to really sort of think through where some of the focus of inquiry and intervention shared by the faculty may map on to other initiatives that I'm aware of at other schools across the university, and how through this platform that Kevin and other deans at other schools have initiated, that we really have the possibility of appreciating the breadth of work that's occurring across the university to really move the dial on equity and race and anti-Black racism. I'm really, really, really impressed. I mean, I know Gerda and Scott's work more intimately because there's a lot of parallels between even my own scholarship. But Arlette, really loved your presentation and the work that you're doing after schools, and can see beautiful synergy and tie-ins with some stuff that I know is occurring at the School of Medicine that would allow, you know, even potentially for different testing and application and basic lab opportunities. So I just wanted to say thank you. This is the fun part of my work, and really appreciate all of you taking the time to share what you do, for doing it so unbelievably well, and for your commitment to the community and collaborative science and scholarship. Thank you.
Right, welcome. Thank you for having us.
Okay, well, with that, we will be following up. I will be following up with some of you independently. You've got me thinking, and I just want to say thank you for having me think about something today that's as meaningful as the work that you're doing. So thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Thanks.